So in terms of defining problems, think in terms of problems, and then solution focus and going into solution focus orientation so that we ask those kinds of questions, obviously, that is part of really business intelligence and what we need to do, regardless of what kind of problems, whether it's personal or business or in anything else. Comments about what you've learned or where we take this? Okay.
You can apply these steps and strategies to any issue in life.
Yeah.
Business, personal, family, whatever.
Yeah. One of the things I like of this diagram, which Robert Dilts came up with from present state to desired state with resources, is that it really is a framework for everything. Where are you? Where you want to go? How are you going to get there? And oftentimes that's the only diagram in my mind as I'm talking. Where are we? And where are we going? And we may start, where are we going? Where are you? And sometimes it's dancing back and forth until clarity is given there. And of course, it then sets up a direction. As a mastery skill, I think direction is so much more important than goals. Goals are the steps that we get there, and reaching a goal and setting a goal and celebrating a goal is really important. But larger than a goal is a direction. What direction are you going? So that if I work with a goal what I discover is this particular goal is not for me, but it's helping me to adjust my direction a little bit better so that I'm really more clear about my passion and the things I want to do, then direction keeps me going. Whereas oftentimes people reach a goal and it's like, done, now what? But direction never ends because we're going in a direction. And so as we set a direction, this sets a direction. The swish pattern sets a direction. The me for whom this is not a problem. And several of the patterns, NLP and neurosemantic patterns, directionalizes us, moves us in that direction. And asking certain kind of meta questions, what resource do you need? Sets you in a direction of just what other resource and what other resource. And they call it the systems check as you step out is this ecological, sets us in a direction. And the direction is I do things that create balance, that enhance, that empower, and that's the overall direction of my life. And I just keep checking it with that. So a sense of direction.
One of the things that I've learned that I really like the thought of that my solution, which is the easiest thing to give and say oftentimes, but it comes out of my map and it's really sort of projecting onto somebody. And their thoughts might be, I've thought of that already, or you don't know my situation, or whatever, because I've often felt that way myself when I've received advice, that it's not quite it, and sometimes I've asked for advice and it's sort of off. So I like that thought of really probing enough so that a person's understanding their matrix can see outside of it or be in it and actually come up with what fits them and what then they have the propulsion then to solve it. I like that thought. I mean, I know that's true for me, and so when I'm in the advice-giving role, I have to remember that.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. Yeah. How many of you someone has given you advice and it was just so, it was just, yeah. And so it seems to me the more we can step into a realization that advice giving is one of the cheapest things to do to anybody. Because I think we really build up our credibility if we explore and find out their attempted solutions. Then you won't be giving them that shallow advice that they know inside already doesn't work. Because you're exploring first.
How do you compare direction with the higher, when you chunk up to your highest?
So direction and outcome merge together at that level. The intent of my intent of my intent. My intent is what I want overall that creates my direction, that outcome, the outcome of the outcome, the outcome of the outcome. So they do merge in that sense.
But they might not necessarily be, your highest. Because when you said balance before, I thought, that probably would be one of my highest
intentions.
Yes.
Is that your pathway? Balance.
It seems like there would have to be something that gets me to balance. Unless I just said I want balance in a lot of ways. So yeah, I guess that would be a direction to it. It could be a direction to it.
Yeah.
But I guess not necessarily.
Well, I would encourage you to make it so. I can't imagine that it would be separate in that sense, that my highest intent is going to be my way of being in the world.
Pathway.
My pathway.
Is it usually, direction would usually be
Yeah.
the pathway or the...
Consider the opposite. Consider walking a pathway that does not fit your highest intention.
Right. I could be imbalanced here, but not there. Yes, that would make no sense. So, yeah, I just was trying to get that clarified. That.
Yeah.
So, in a way, you could ask a lot of other, other words, direction, highest intention.
Exactly.
Outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are synonyms. Yesterday we ended after we looked at all the wealth stuff and how we create wealth and adding value and appreciating. What skill do you need to work in business more effectively? The business that you do, the business that you're going to do, what skill? This morning we listed lots and lots of that data about business. And out of that may come some skills that you might want to create and identify. Because if we know how to use our matrix to create a new skill or enhance, enrich, and expand a skill from this messy board there, and your list of some of the data of business intelligence, what business skills do you need? Could be negotiating or selling or marketing. It could be brainstorming and producing, developing, taking to market. It might be developing a solution focus. That might be the skill to develop. It could be any of these things, reading a business, financial report, holding a future vision while being present. That may be the skill. The skill of self-mastery or flexibility. So if you turn this data not only into principles, but also into skill, and started identifying what are the skills I'm going to develop, enhance, create, investigate, that I'm going to add some skills to my business mastery repertoire in the next month, in the next 6 months, in the next year. If I was to add 3 skills this next year, so that by next July I've got 3 skills that are much richer, fuller than I have now, what skills would you want to enrich? And so what we did yesterday, you may want to turn back to that page just to see that matrix, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes to identify one and start to look at what would that skill be. So it could be any of these, could be other things that's come up throughout the day.
Well, I think the hardest skill for most business executives that develop is to listen.
Okay, so maybe the listening skill
is so critical.
Okay. I want to give you 5 minutes to identify now one business skill. What is it? Define it. Describe it. A business skill. A skill which, if it was richer, fuller, if it was present for you, would make a significant difference. Making time for change, taking our time matrix so that we make time to do the things that we want to add that's going to make a difference, and then committing ourselves to developing the skills of business. We talked about taking the business ideas and that business intelligence and mind muscling that so that we can really turn it into beliefs and decisions and feelings, and then really flesh it out with specific things as we meta detail. Comments, questions on today on business? Because we're going to shift gears tomorrow and do a different kind of application.
I'm wondering if the exercise where you were just defining the problem, do you have an anchor or patience the things required?
I don't have an anchor as such. I think of it, I guess, more, I've never thought about this as such, I think of it more as a frame of mind, and a frame of mind of patience and persistence and holding whoever I'm working with, that person's agenda, holding that person's outcome and agenda and purpose, just holding it and being almost like in coaching we talk about being a crucible to the other person. So we create the context so that they can find and do what they need to do. And I just think of myself as, it's not even working up to patience, it's just really a sense of the honor of being able to work with someone like that. Because I really learned so much in that process. So it doesn't feel like it's work. It just feels like I get to be present to another person as they jump around and in and out of their matrices, and I don't know if that answers the question at all. Impressions from the day.
I love my reframe on my principle about what business is. I love that because we now
Okay.
live in it.
Okay. So you're going to keep that with you.
I'm taking it home.
Meta detailing has been very powerful for me because I've been a detail person most of my life, and I guess I still am. But I have given myself permission to go to the global side. But I was thinking a bit in either or. And now I've got a much more mental picture of being able to move it and use it into the detail so that I don't run lost in the detail.
When I first found the meta detailing principle, it suddenly dawned on me, it's not either or. It's this flexibility of consciousness to zoom out and to zoom in. And it is that synergy that is a prerequisite of genius. I can't tell you what that did to all my reading. It was like suddenly I was seeing it everywhere. And especially when I was reading biographies, at that time I was doing the modeling on wealth building, and I was modeling and looking at the lives of a lot of people who had done that, and it was just everywhere. It just absolutely amazed me. And so that's where some of those quotations came from. And as I've continued to do that, the meta detailing really, when you find a master in something, they're doing that. So that the difference that makes the difference seems like a small little thing. I mean, what is the difference between someone who is at the Olympic level of expertise and they can run 2 seconds faster? Or the expert musician who can somehow or another add some kind of a magical quality. Somebody else can play the piece and play it very well, but when the master does it, they're playing the same notes, but somehow there's something else in there. They've meta-detailed something into it. And when you start asking them and exploring it, their mind is doing that meta-detailing in some way. They can see something, and then they bring that something to it. And when we stand outside of it, it's hard to pinpoint what that is. I mean, if you looked at the cartoon characters that Disney created, what was it about that versus other cartoon characters? So that's the smallest piece that just propelled it into something else was driven by this thing of meta-detailing.
I think what hit me just like a hammer in the head when you said that was I got a DVD for a friend who loves to play piano, and it was about Liberace, and it's his life story, and it showed a lot of his scenes. Well, by the time I got through watching it myself, I never gave it to my friend. Because it's such a beautiful to entertain guests. It's mine. And what hit me in the head was the way he could overlay on top of the basic fundamentals all of the other rhythms that was I have not heard anybody else do. That was definitely meta.
I just had a metaphorical thought.
A metaphorical thought.
This meta detailing, it's like, you can go into a dark room and find stuff. You can feel around whatever. But the picture I had, meta-detailing, is like going into the room with the light on. And you can find all the stuff that you need, and with much more clarity. And you can get back out of the room without stumbling over.
So lost in details is in that dark room.
Yeah.
Lots of details. Tomorrow we're going to move to what we're calling leadership, but what we're going to talk about is supercharging your attitude. So we're going to supercharge the attitude. We're going to talk about some leadership things. I'll probably do the efficiency pattern. We'll do a couple patterns about emotional vitality and energy. So we're going to wrap up some of the mastery skills with a number of different things. As we wrap that up, I'll try to cram most of that in the morning because I know some of you will be leaving, so that we'll get the best of it, and then we'll do the secret of life after the rest of you are gone.
I like that.
I'm not sure what we'll do this evening, but we'll be back here at, let's say, 8 o'clock, because that's about the time we were here last night. We'll be back here at 8 o'clock, and maybe business. Scott, you got some things maybe you'd like to kind of share some things, and so we'll just let that be an open forum for 8 o'clock this evening. Remember, we're going to take off all the books and everything. And so we're going to end this evening, and I'd like to invite you to the land of Oz. So as you stretch and relax and take a deep breath and let it all go, the things of the day, especially that time when we were really focusing on problems, because you might have gotten that into your body, and you might want to take some deep breaths and breathe that in and really let that go. Just release it. And as you relax comfortably and just find yourself feeling yourself in the chair, on the floor, and just getting acquainted with your body for a moment, noticing if there's any tension somewhere. And if there is tension, you might want to tighten it and release it for a bit. Just notice your body, how you're feeling on the inside and what your body feels like as it feels the chair or the floor. And as you do, then just imagine floating away, floating down deeper and deeper inside. In the last few days, and maybe especially today when we talked about the problems, sometimes thought balls come in and they swirl this way and that way. And sometimes states of confusion and disorientation have occurred. And we don't know quite what to do with this, or how to define this, or what's going to solve that, and thoughts come and go. And if you'll imagine them as just a whirlwind of thoughts, just circling, coming, going, circling, going round and round. Because once upon a time there was a girl in the land of Kansas who experienced a whirlwind of things coming and going in the dry heat of a Kansas tornado. And sometimes our thoughts are like that, our emotions are like that. We just go round and round and round. And if you'll just let that whirlwind of thoughts, of worries, of fears, of frustrations, just rise up, and you may rise up as Dorothy did in that house, round and round, just letting them go, round and round. Because sometimes we fight our thoughts and we resist them and we get stuck, but if we just go with them for a bit, down the stream of consciousness or up the stream of consciousness, round and round. Because something happened wonderful to Dorothy as she floated in that tornado that took the house to the land of Oz. And I don't know where your Oz is. Maybe we don't need to know where it is. Sometimes that's the way thoughts and feelings and emotions are. We just go round and round and round and round. And when it's all over with, sometimes we have a moment of amnesia. Suddenly we miss something and we've landed somewhere new. And when you land somewhere new, inside your mind, in the land of Oz. When you open the door to that magical land inside, wherever it is, it's like suddenly there's color and music and wonder and beauty. We can go to magical lands in our mind. And yet when we're in the magical land of Oz, sometimes the very questions that intrigue us and that pull on us are the same questions, but maybe at a higher level. The questions about how do I get to the Emerald City? How do I get to my ideal place, my desired outcomes? How do I get to the place where I can be fully and completely me? How can I create the kind of life, the kind of finances, the kind of relationships, the kind of health? How can I create that place where all the dreams and all the wonders, all the visions come true? And it's a journey, is it not? A journey. There's a yellow brick road. There's a pathway. A pathway of moving toward that desired outcome. That yellow brick road is the brick road of resources. And Dorothy found resources on her way. She found musical resources. She was going to find the wizard. You have to follow the yellow brick road. You have to follow the resources and follow the path of your hopes and dreams, the path that will take you to the wizard. Along the way, she found the wonderful wizard of the north, Glinda. And there may have been some magicians in your life that have pointed you that way. That's what she did. She just pointed the way. There may have been people in this workshop here who have offered some insights and some ideas and have been a wizard to you, pointing the way. Sometimes we meet associates and companions and they come with us, and that may be a resource too. And it's funny as we walk that resource road, because we all say the same thing: if I only had a brain, if I only had the intelligence, if I only had the wisdom, if I only had the knowledge, if I only had a heart, if I only had the courage, if I only had the guts, if I only had the passion, if I only had the energy. And so we start moving and moving. I don't know where you moved in that pathway towards your Emerald City, but when we get there may be trials along the way. There may be challenges, things we have to do. We may have to get the broom of the wicked witch. But once we get there, to find the wizard, we discover something magical, more magical than anything of all. We discover that we had it all along. It was inside. We just didn't recognize it. And so to the Scarecrow, he was given a certificate, but he had been using his brain all along. And the Tin Man, he had been the compassionate one all along. He already had a heart. But now he got something that just confirmed it. And so with the fearful, timid lion, he had courage all along. The resources inside, emerging, being unleashed. What resources have been unleashed? What do we need to recognize? What do I need to recognize? The resources I already have, and the resources that will be emerging more and more in the days and the weeks to come. Because the wizard is you. The magician is you. Inside the matrix of your mind, as you say words, as you set frames, you make it so. And what will you make so now? In terms of your sense of self, your self-esteem and value and worth? What will you make so in terms of your vision, your passion, your interest? What will you make so? And so letting all that whirlwind swirl around and around. Because at any moment you can enter into that matrix or that emerald city in your mind. And then you can swirl back down and find yourself at home, in body, and bringing back with you all those magical traits, all that knowledge, all those skills. And in the days and the weeks to come, you may want to visit, you may want to swirl up. Take your frustrations and fears and apprehensions and swirl up to the journey that you're on inside. And rediscovering again that magic lies in the language we have, in the states, in the meta-states, in the meta-programs, and the things we can do that creates our matrix. That we can identify a skill we may not have yet or just have in an embryonic form. We can start to touch it and develop it and let it grow and emerge inside of us. The things that you've learned in the last few days, the things you've learned today, the things that's been of importance, you can bring back, wake up with. So breathe in your resources. Welcome them in with acceptance and appreciation. Welcome them in with awe. And in a rate and a speed that fits for you, as you keep breathing them in, then come back to this place, this time, this room. Thank you. Today is our last day, and we're going to be doing a lot of wrapping up and working on things. I thought one of the things I'd like to give to you and present to you today as we get started is some more about the matrix that we haven't even touched on here. Originally, I thought in 7 days I could say just about everything I know about the matrix so far, and I find that there's lots of pieces that I haven't even shared yet. And so I'd like to do a few pieces I hope will wrap some things up, pull some things together, and I'll share some of that, and then we'll talk about how to coach to the matrix. So as we think about the matrix model, of course, it's just a model, it's just a map, it's just a way of thinking about things. It's not real, but it's a way of organizing our thoughts. And so we think of it as a framework of frameworks. And our design has been to pull into it all that we know in NLP and neurosemantics, as well as how people work and function. We started with the idea that we live in a matrix, but of course, when you first meet a person, we don't even recognize that they're in a state. It takes a little while to recognize and remember that we're always in a state. So the first thing that we start to detect and become aware of is, that's right,
My computer doesn't enjoy the Matrix too.
The first thing that we start to become aware of is, I'm in a state, or this person is in a state, and where does this come from, and what is it? A state of mind, state of body, state of emotion. So at first the matrix is invisible, and then we start waking up to our matrix, and we start becoming aware that we're inside of a matrix, that we're really not dealing with reality and the territory for what it is, but is mediated through our maps. So as we wake up to that, as we wake up that everybody else is inside of a matrix of frames, that this state comes from somewhere, then we start realizing that the meanings that people give to things, to events, to people, to words, the meanings they give to that somehow creates their state. So if I think you just insulted me and put me down and disrespected me, if I give you that meaning, you rolled your eyes. You looked away when I started speaking to you. And that's the meaning I gave to it. Then I go into the state of feeling put down and insulted. So there's a relationship between meaning and state. There's a relationship between meaning and emotion. You take the meaning out of anything and the emotion goes. You feel nothing because it means nothing. And when all of life means nothing, then you really feel a big nothingness called futility and emptiness and vanity upon vanities. And so meaning and emotion. When we do the movie rewind, when you get somebody to put on a movie of some negative thing, that every time they think about that gives them a charge or a phobia or a fear or something, and you take them to the end, you rewind it, and you rewind it. Because when you rewind, you change the syntax. And if I said a sentence backwards, it wouldn't mean anything. And when you take the meaning out, the emotion goes. So there's a relationship between meaning and emotional states. And when you change the meaning, that wasn't disrespect. He had just been looking for his loved one, and he noticed it and turned away and looked at her. It wasn't being disrespectful to me, but excited and passionate about finding somebody he'd been looking for. Oh, it means that. Now my state is different. My matrix shifts and changes. The matrix is always changing and shifting. It's very fluid. So while we draw these flat lines and this two-dimensional thing, or if you can imagine it three-dimensional, it's fluid. It's always moving. It's like a whirlwind of thoughts and feelings and memories and imaginations, and it goes round and around, and it's dynamic. It's alive. The matrix is alive. And we're inside of it, and we create it as we construct meaning. So as we live in this matrix and we construct this meaning, we do so at so many different levels and so many different ways, by making movies and by editing those movies and by giving words to it and framing it, making evaluations and associating emotions with it and setting different kinds of frames about it and metaphors about it and intentions about it. That this whole funnel of meaning making is the source of our life. You're a meaning maker. I'm a meaning maker. And the quality of your skill of creating, constructing, inventing, finding meaning is the quality of your life. And the quality of the things you can do, and the quality of the experiences you can have with your loved ones, and with wealth building, and with making a difference in the world, and how you feel in your body. Because the meaning, while we tease it out and draw it this way to try to think about how we construct meaning, it's always meaning that our neurology, nervous system / brain, cortex, has constructed. So it's always neural meaning, neural semantic. And so finding and constructing and appraising the best meanings constructs our reality. And so with that simple process, we can summarize it in meaning and state. Meaning / intention state. Because behind the layers of our meaning making, that reflexivity, is we always have an intention. And our belief in NLP and neurosemantics and in this kind of psychology is that we're always trying to do something of value. That there's something inside of us that wants to grow and expand and unleash our potentials and do better. And we believe that everybody wants to do that. And when they're not, they're in so much pain and hurt that when they want to hurt and destroy and corrupt, it's because the meanings they've made are so destructive and morbid. And the problem is not them, it's their meanings. So that's the process. But what happens, because we're not born fully human, we develop and grow, we fill up our categories. Certain categories are really prime categories that we fill up with certain meanings about ourselves. As part of the meaning of life is discovering who I am and who I can become. And the potential's there of being everything I can. And finding all my potentials and all my skills and the gifts. You have a gift, and finding that gift and knowing thyself becomes part of the meaning of life. And touching and relating and loving, connecting to others is part of the meaning of life. And living present and moving on, learning from the past and moving on and having a sense that I can make a future. I can create and designate a future. And I can go and navigate many worlds. And this is the meaning of life. And so the relationship between constructing meaning and meaningfulness, which when your body is full of meaningfulness, it's energy, it's vitality, it's like you don't need the alarm clock to get up because you're really living on purpose and with intention. So the matrix then is a way of just summarizing some of the key facets so we can then work with it. So if we start thinking systemically about all of this, one of the things about systems is that systems are processing units. So in systems language, we talk about input, and we talk about output, and then throughput. So this gives us systems language of feedback and feed forward. And we've mentioned this, and as you think about this, then you can watch a dynamic, fluid, energetic matrix of your own or someone else in action. Because in comes information. But what is the person noticing and sorting? What information are they bringing in? And is it in visual, auditory, kinesthetic? So as we selectively focus and delete things and generalize, we bring things in and we feed it back. The feedback loop is this. It's that meaning-making loop. That's how we feed back information, ideas, data. And we've got all this language, the 26 questions of meaning and belief and value and decision and intention and metaphor and realization, understanding, and on and on and on. That we construct meaning in that way. That's the feedback loop. So how well do you do in terms of feeding back, enhancing generalizations and empowering decisions and life-enriching beliefs? And of course, then the feed forward is what happens as this information comes up and then comes back down to be messages to our body, messages to our soma, and so psychosomatic message. So we metabolize ideas. We metabolize food, but we also metabolize ideas, so we digest thoughts. And they get into our cells, into our neurology, which is why forever all kinds of religions, philosophies, theologies have said, be careful what you think. It'll create your reality. Men are not disturbed by things, but by their interpretation of things. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And I guess that applies to women. As a woman thinks in her heart, so is she. And so, as Shakespeare said, that it is our appraisals that make things so. So the power of that, as we get that into our bodies, which then affects our health and our energy, or if we send messages here that we spend lots of time on the inside fighting and resisting, and we get all kinds of psychosomatic disturbances inside, and we're not aligned, we're conflicted and torn. So it affects our body, and of course it comes out as feed forward also as how we talk, what we say, how we gesture, how we behave. And so the system of sending it in and out. But it's so rich that as we're feeding back things about what does this mean about me? And we feed back more thoughts about others. And we feed back things about time. I don't have enough time, or where's this going to go, or this is just like it's always been. And so we feed back here, and of course that's going to feed back to state. So everything gets grounded in state. That's why state is a good place to start. What state are you in? How'd you do that? Is this a common state? You come here regularly? So we find the strategy of all the stuff that's going on that puts a person into state, and because the state grounds the matrix, you put a person into a different state, you interrupt that state, and oftentimes that old matrix can't get activated. So if you think about matrices getting activated, is your power matrix of self-efficacy, is it activated right now? What would you need to activate it? Your matrix of love and compassion and empathy, is it activated right now? What would you need to do to activate it? To turn it on, to get it moving? How much is it moving? What would you need to say, or what intention would turn it on? So one way we move back and forth from the different matrices is to identify how we do something, and once we do that, then we can start turning on very resourceful matrices. We can fly into a calm, fly into a presence of mind, fly into a genius state. So if there are constructs, then really coaching your body and finding out what movements, what gestures, what anchors, to use NLP language, what anchors would set that off again. And of course, it's with repetition. It's with intensity that we build this, install it. And then at the neurosemantic level, it is our way of being in the world. So I don't have to remember this stuff. It's in my fingers. My fingers know stuff. And my muscle memory knows stuff. So it gets located and grounded really in state. So as we work with the systems, this is where now we can follow the energy of the system. What is the energy of the system? What is the energy? What energy would you look for?
The meaning, the intention that we put to it.
So some mental energy. Do you know what mental energy feels like? Have you used some mental energy trying to figure something out here? Mental energy. So it could be mental energy, the meanings, the significance. What else is actual energy in this system?
Just watching the kinesthetics, watch the body tighten, watch the facial expressions, watch the... Yeah.
So all the calibration to the body, and this takes calibration, I think, to a new level. Not just, are they making pictures, are they saying things to themselves, are they having feelings, but realizing that we express our matrix in our movements, gestures, feelings, and then inquiring, what does that gesture mean for you? And of course, this really blows out of the water the fact that there's some dictionary of gestures. Each one of us have our own dictionary of our gestures because it comes from our matrix. And so we watch that, and we can start calibrating and understanding some of that energy.
And then you listen for their limiting language, and you start to see what their frames of their world are. And you just kind of park that and just come back for that energy. Is that depleting? Is that feeding?
So the mental, the emotional, the physical comes out in language and in behavior. Language is so key because I can hear this matrix in language. They just start using I language, or me, or talking about themselves, or how they experience, or their lack of confidence, or their confidence, or their powers, or what they can do, what they can't do. I'll never be able to do that. I can handle that. So with language, you can hear different matrices firing off, as it were, and you can go there to explore that, to see what that's about. You can hear language here, and that's why we sorted out those 26 different words, because it's just the construction of meaning. And if one word doesn't work, you just use a synonym, another facet. If this is the diamond of consciousness, of mental, emotional consciousness, we can just go in to that diamond, that facet, in so many ways. So the language that comes out is really, really skilled. Several of you asked me this morning and yesterday, what can I do? What's the next step in learning this stuff and becoming really skilled? Well, language, and as you tune up your ears, so the models of language, from meta model to Milton model to the meta questions to the matrix questions, and these linguistic distinctions that mark what's going on in the system. So we follow that energy. Someone says a word, and if they say a word and there's some gesture, movement, feeling, body stuff with it, my guess is it is semantically loaded. You ever see someone say something that's semantically loaded? It may be the emphasis. It may be some other emotion. But when the body is activated with words, and as you listen to a person emphasize words or make an embedded command statement, phrase, question of some sort, that indicates it's semantically loaded. It means something significant. So following the rabbit through the labyrinth of the matrix to see how deep that rabbit hole goes and where it goes and all of this. So thinking systemically, you can see you just have to embrace ambiguity. You just have to really welcome the chaos of just following that stream of consciousness, that stream of emotion, wherever it goes. And getting a sense, is it spiraling up? Is it spiraling down? Where is it spiraling to?
If you could explain, Michael, a little bit about the statement where you said our matrix is mediated through our maps, or throughout our maps. Maybe that's what you've been saying, but that kind of level.
So another word for frame is map, how we've mapped it. And even at the neurological level of perception, out there in the actual world, the territory, there is no such thing as color. Color is a function of our rods and cones in our eyes. So out there, what is out there in the territory? Well, the electromagnetic spectrum. And we see just a little bit of that. We bring it in and translate those energy manifestations through our rods and cones that send signals, and we interpret it as color. Now to people who are still very Aristotelian in the way they think, you tell them there's no color out there, and they say, I'm from Missouri, and if I see it, I'll believe it. And I see color. But there is no color out there. So the territory, color is part of our mapping. It's mapping at the neurological level. When we map at the linguistic level, when we map at the representational level, map at the conceptual level, so it's all mapping. So in that sense, we only deal with our maps. Our maps mediate, filter reality.
Okay. So what's that? Like filtering or mediating? It's the lens through which
it's the
we
lens.
view reality.
And in NLP, we say we delete so much, we generalize so much, we distort, even giving color to the energy What's out there? Energy manifestations. Energy manifestations. We don't deal with it at that level. Just my personal opinion, throw something and we'll get these questions. The people, and you may totally disagree with this, but we do not live at the quantum level.
It's there.
It's there, but we theorize that stuff. I mean, that's all theory. I think it's probably accurate, but the dance of electrons, because that's all out there, this is just a dance of electrons, and it's patterning. But I can't take that thing and put it right through there. I don't believe we ever will. Because I don't think we live at the quantum level. Right now, we are working, I'll get to that, we're working on getting to the autonomic nervous system level. And if you're trained, you can lower your blood pressure, you can lower your breathing, you can change your autonomic nervous system. We've got one pattern, maybe two in NLP that maybe moves to the immune system level, the allergy cure. But we're not getting anywhere close to the substrat of microscopic level, let alone the DNA level. Now, if thoughts obviously can go to the autonomic nervous system level. Thoughts obviously, because we can send a message and create an allergy out of something that's not harmful, and then the body makes it real by creating allergens in our bloodstream in the immune system. But sending thoughts lower than that, I mean, we're not even close to dealing with the immune system effectively at the thought level. So how to go much lower than that? And all these people who are writing, I mean, it's such a sexy word, quantum psychology. I think we need to focus our energies on what we can deal with and start. Most people, it would be a miracle if they could just lower the blood pressure with their thinking. And for those of us who can do that, now we're working on the immune system level. And we would put NLP on the map. We'd put neurosomatics on the map if we could come up with a pattern for curing cancer, curing lupus, curing autoimmune system diseases. Now we're working that way, but that's all the further, we're just barely getting into that area. Let me get...
I also wanted to say, in respect to how we represent color inside of ourselves, we also have shared meanings about what a color is.
Yeah.
For example, my son is colorblind. Now, I knew that because he'd taken the Ishikara test, and I knew that reds and greens and browns kind of looked the same. It had to be the middle 80s when the red M&Ms came back. Remember that red was out for a long time? And he was so excited, I bought him M&Ms, put him in a cup, and he's going, "Where's the red?" Because it looked exactly like the light brown to him. And so I had to pull the red ones away and put them right next to the light brown ones and assure him that those were the red ones. But all he saw were the normal M&Ms because it's shared me.
Well, I was going to say then, is it simply a matter of technique or a matter of modeling to do that? Like there maybe, having someone that can reproduce something like that, the way they're running their neurology.
Reproduce what?
Okay, any sort of specific, like they can directly affect the autonomic nervous system, or they can directly affect if there are examples of people that can...
Oh, yeah. And then we've got all kinds of training. Any biofeedback machine will teach you how to do that.
But is it simply a matter of taking to work at any of those other levels, too?
Well, the question is, can we go to those levels in the first place? When you think about the electromagnetic spectrum and how much we can see or hear as that energy manifestation hits our sense receptors, we don't have sense receptors to see ultraviolet or X-rays or TV waves or radio. We don't have the receptors. But we can build extra neural devices that can pick that up. And that's what we call science. So we're not equipped. Now, some animals can pick up radar, bats and things, pick up magnetic energy manifestations, but we're not equipped with that. This is where it seems to me, and this is where DHE, in my opinion, really went wrong. Richard Bandler says, I hallucinated a microscope, and I could see to the nuclear particles of matter. Well, it's a great hallucination. It's a great fun if you're doing it in a trance, but when you try to sell it, talk about overselling it. So recognizing in Structure of Magic Volume 1, John and Richard both talked about restraints. And I haven't seen that word used in NLP in years. The restraints of neurology, the restraints of our bodies, the restraints socially, the restraints of language, the things that we have that restrain us, that we have to live our lives inside of those restraints. And so when we do that, then we can make some maps and do some stuff instead of being in la land.
And I think once again, that example of my son is very tiny, that once I opened up his sensory perception, he could tell the difference. When Eskimos have got over 40 words for snow.
So that's mapping at the linguistic level.
Right. We see snow, but if someone can tell you that fine difference,
makes a
difference now, if you know someone that's overcome lupus, and if you could map and model down to that very fine distinction of what it was, I think, and restraints, what are they? If our eyes can see one photon difference in light, if we can notice decibels, it's all our map that up until now we haven't been able to detect that.
Okay.
I'm trying to pull this apart so it sounds okay, but when Bandler's talking about making a microscope and examining things, my take is that there are a certain percentage of us that would pull that off. I've got a friend who is farsighted, and she will see things with these naked eyes that I need a big telescope to see. So she's doing something, and in my reality, in my map says that there's a certain percentage of us who do this, and maybe they have purposely or accidentally trained, their perceptors.
Well, he talked about microscope, and that is seeing at the molecular level. So to me, that is just pure nonsense and bullshit.
Okay.
He said, I hallucinated binoculars and saw 3 miles down the road. Well, this would change the whole field of glassware if he could actually do it or get any one other human being to do it under testing circumstances.
He's hallucinating that versus modeling someone who actually can do it.
So what are the restraints of neurology? Anyway, we live in a matrix, and to answer Brian's question, we deal with it through our maps. And we map it at multiple levels. First, neurology. What can neurology actually bring in? And then after that, it's going to be at the representational level, the linguistic level, and making certain distinctions. And so we don't deal with the territory. We deal with it as mediated through our maps. So we can only be as effective dealing with that territory as we have really effective maps. And that's what Korzybski said, that the map is not the territory. The map is useful only if it provides a structure similar to the territory that allows us to do things. It has correspondence of some sort. It doesn't have to be real or literal or true, but it has to have some kind of correspondence so that my map will lead me there and I can use it. So that's what we're doing, making representational maps, linguistic maps, training our neurology even to make finer and finer distinctions. So we live in this matrix world, and when you work with anybody, you're working really with their maps. And if you get mad at someone, usually you're mad at their maps. I hate your maps. And when you think about arguments, people are one map is in war against another map. The frame war is what's going on, because that's what we have to offer. And if we recognize there are always maps, then they're always limited. So everything I'm saying is limited. It's the best knowledge I got at this particular moment. I know I'll be changing my mind. I just don't know about what. So that's why it seems to me cutting out this know-it-all stuff, or this arrogance, or this acting like we're infallible, or we got the last word of the map. We don't. We've got 100 million other things to learn. So the matrix is a system, and as you think about it systemically, then what happens to change the metaphor a little bit as we encounter the world, the territory, and we map it with our meanings and everything, and it just keeps putting us into state. The things the conclusions we draw, as it were, creates. This is actually all state, and the state is made up of state of self, state of resources, state of my maps of others, state of time, and state of the world. But this is actually inside me. So we tease it out to think about it as if it's out there, it's in the back of my mind, but actually it's in my neurology. It's in myself, and so it's the place, it's the stance, it's the position from which I come. And that's why when you start calling these maps in questions and start doing some deframing, it can feel like the very world a person is living in is shaking and falling apart, and their fabric of reality is not solid anymore when they're in that confusion. And so we have to map it. And when we're mapless, when we don't know how to think, and we're really disoriented, it can be a very confusing kind of a feeling. But this just is a way of thinking about the matrix and how to therefore work with the matrix. Some principles of the matrix. The matrix is created and activated by meaning. So just a basic principle that I would guess that you fully and completely know now. The matrix, we create meaning by metastating ourselves using our self-reflexive consciousness. Reflexivity is the most dominant thing of human consciousness. We never just think. We always think about our thinking, feel about our thinking, have physiology about our thinking. That reflexivity, that circling, that spiraling, reflexivity is the most dominant fact about any of us. And if we don't deal with reflexivity, then we won't deal with a full person.